All right. Good morning, everybody. I think we'll get class underway. Stragglers coming in. Welcome. Good morning. Today we're going to be talking about foster and adoption. This is kind of a topic that was born out of our small group on our second or third meeting. And it was a little bit timely as the National Stand Sunday for Foster and Adoption Awareness was actually November 7th, so we're a little late to the game. But nonetheless, it was a topic that our congregation, many people in our congregation have participated in, and we took it as an opportunity to kind of spread the word, if you will. Class will be a little bit different. I'm going to introduce obviously the topic. We'll talk a little bit about it. We've got 4 families from our congregation who are going to share a little bit about their stories and their experiences with fostering and adopting. And then we've been fortunate enough to have Colleen Bebich from Olive Crest. It's a faith-based foster and adoption agency located here in Silverdale and actually up and down the whole West Coast. She'll tell us a little bit more about the organization, kind of the grassroots reality of it here in Kitsap County. And then we'll open it up for discussion. For the little bit that I have been involved in fostering and adopting, I find that a lot of people have questions. It's an interesting topic. Everybody's interested in it and everybody believes in it. But anybody that's spurned to action really doesn't know what to do, or there's a bit of fear or anything there. So don't worry. We're not going to have a box of kids at the door that we're asking you to take home. The main goal here is whether you have questions or your network of people or coworkers or people that you share with outside of church, if they have questions that you might have a little bit of ammunition to talk about it or to refer people to the right spots. So it's just all about information sharing and education this morning. So, like I said, our objective is to increase awareness. I kept notes because I've done this a couple of times and I usually start to choke up or cry every time I talk about it. So I am going to read notes this time, so I don't do that. But again, I encourage you all to ask questions. We'll probably, like I said, we'll deal with it for a few minutes. And this was an undertaking of our life group, so thank you very much for our small group for the coffee and donuts, if you haven't had the chance to participate in them yet already.
I heard you were going to do this every week.
We're going to try to do it every week. Yeah. I won't tell you who in our small group said donuts in the foyer would be a good idea, but you can probably guess. All right. But on the table outside, either in between class and service, there's a bunch of resources out there, names, phone numbers, organizations, some not process materials, but materials just about state programs, as well as ways that people can help. So feel free to take all those, or talk to me or anybody else that you want to this morning about it. So I'll probably start, with Heather and I's story. Probably 8 years ago, we were in a pretty good spot. Our son was doing okay. I think he was 15 at the time. And we were looking at where can we go for some works and some volunteer opportunities. I volunteered at a few other organizations, realized that, hey, I'm just filling in for a job for somebody. It wasn't quite fitting the bill. And every time that we had that discussion, it always came back to kids. Kids are truly innocent in the whole process. If we do look to spend our time and money and energies doing something, it always came back to kids. Some of our extended family had been foster parents before, so we made a few phone calls, talked to neighbors and people that we knew, a couple people here at the church, and got connected with Olive Crest, and probably within 30 days we were licensed for, I think, 3 to 5 year olds. And probably within a week, we got a call saying that there's a group of 4. There's a family in Kingston that can take 3. We're looking for a placement locally for the 6-year-old. And obviously that led to us having our daughter, Missy. And unlike some of the other warriors that you'll hear stories from, we had one placement. We had a couple of respite care and a couple of 2-week, 3-week placements, but we really only had the one placement. Since that time, we said to ourselves, one of the things, or there's a couple of things that I learned throughout the process that usually when somebody asks me, oh, you're a foster parent, and what was that like? And there's usually a couple of things I tell them. Probably the very first realization that I had was it was just as much about the parents. And we often just look at the child and that's where the emotions and that's where the feelings and everything come from. But what I didn't know is that the main number one or first objective, if possible, is reunification with the parent. So as a foster parent, I didn't realize that that was my job, is to be this interim love giver to the children until the parents can hopefully turn it around. Whether it's from neglect or lack of skills or unemployment or dependency, whatever the situation may be, I thought, oh, that's kind of cool. I didn't realize that I was helping out my fellow man, not only the child. So that was probably the biggest realization, because there's such a focus on the children. And I didn't see that the vast majority of resources, or the huge amount of resources that were going towards the parents, if there's a willingness there. And then the second thing that I usually tell people is don't be intimidated by it. It wasn't near as bad as I thought it was going to be. Because what are the stories you hear? You only hear the fantastic ones. You only hear the gong shows, the times it doesn't work. And I hope I don't step on some of your information, Colleen, but here in Kitsap County, at least from Olive Crest a couple weeks ago, there's 309 kids within the county that are in the foster system. And I go, 1 or 2 people, that's a percentage point. There's 1.5 million people around here. If we get 10, 15 families, that's 30%. I go, so it's not as daunting of a task. And then you always hear the state's difficult, and you're going to get a bad caseworker, and man, the legal system. Zero of that. Every single person I encountered, whether it was my caseworker, a judge, state worker, visitations, doctors, everybody was just incredibly professional and supportive. And that was a realization. I thought, oh my gosh, honey, what did we get into? And there was zero of that. Make no mistakes. There's moments where you're having somebody come into your house. So there's this adjustment period. There's the how do we communicate? How do we operate the rules? In some respects, that's fun and challenging. But it wasn't near as bad. So if anybody that I'm talking to about fostering, and I can see they got fear in their eyes, it's a day in the life. You're just living. The executive director from Olive Crest, when I finished our class, he said, just be parents. Don't be intimidated. It's easy. There is no booklet for it. Actually, there's several booklets for it. But, the crux of it all is you're just being a parent. So that's our kind of story. I've got Gary and Linda. Jess is going to share the St. Martin's, as well as Jason. So does anybody want to go next, if you will? I don't know if you just wanted to hold the mic or come up. This is all pretty informal, so if anybody has questions, just throw your hand up, everyone.
Time? Where's the clock?
Go with
Oh, there is no clock.
Yeah, I'll
Okay.
take it. Wait for me.
Oh, good, okay, because I don't want to get into somebody else's time. Anyway, not that long. If I say crazy stuff, it's because I have insomnia and I am on 29 hours without sleep. So just kind of pass it by, if that happens. Introduction, I think everybody probably knows us. I'm Linda Wheeler, that's my husband Gary. We have 4 children, Heather, Brett, who you know, who's at this congregation, his wife Erica, and the kids Christian and Hannah, Adam and Isaiah. the reason we started fostering was we were 54, almost 55 years old, so we were not babies. And we just decided, kids were gone, they were married, no grandkids, and we thought, okay, this would be a good time to, maybe do something. And the reason was because Gary heard on the radio, it was a radio spot, I don't know what you call them, like from New Hope, which is the agency that we ended up going with in Seattle, part of Krista Ministries. Anyway, they were doing little spots about their need for foster parents, for respite care, for all those different types of things. And then they did each child a day or a week, I'm not sure. And the one that kind of got us was that Gary came home and said, wow, did you hear that? And I heard it later. And it was a little toddler, I believe maybe 12, 13 months old, that had sucked his fingernail off, his thumbnail off, because he was in the crib so long and he was neglected and he was hungry and he was dehydrated and all these things. And so that kind of like started us thinking about it. We're old, what in the world, we got all this time and stuff to do. Anyway, we decided to check it out. But again, we didn't think we were qualified. We really did think we were too old. But we decided to go to orientation, which I think most of the people in here that have been through that go, and discovered that there was, for us, because we did not want to adopt, that goes next. Anyway, so there was respite care and there was receiving care, and we chose receiving care, which I was just talking to Colleen about that. Dates and times have kind of changed. When we were doing it, there wasn't a limit on it. So we had some kids for a few days, a few weeks, a few months, and if I say a few years. And we chose receiving care. So I just want to do a shout out to my husband because he was a rock during this whole thing. He was the one that kind of was the impetus of the whole procedure, and he was still working, which he worked for another 8 years while we were doing this. And he did everything I did. So poopy diapers, whatever, he did it. Rock the babies, do the whole thing. We had one that was like probably the world's greatest projectile vomiter. And so Gary was the cleanup guy for Isaiah, and he did it Burger King, wherever we went. Isaiah decided to vomit. Anyway, at that point, when we had the babies, we ended up having 10 babies, 1 toddler, 1 6-year-old. Not all at once, but that first 4 years was very, very busy. Also at that time, our children decided to have babies. And so we had 8 grandchildren in less than 4 years, and our 10 babies and the toddlers, and it was like babies, babies, babies. It was just crazy. So I've mentioned Isaiah, and a lot of you know his story in here. A lot of you don't know his story. He came to us. I'll just tell you briefly the story, and please stop me if I go too long, okay? We had a baby that we were caring for, and her name was Zoe, and we had lots of different issues with her, but she was getting ready to leave us, and anyway, before that happened, her social worker called and said, we have a little boy, and we'd like for you to take him. We don't have anybody else. The parents are young parents, but their marriage is falling apart. He has issues, health issues. We need somebody to take him. Honestly, it scared us to death. It scared me to death because I took the first phone call. I thought, whoa, because the word hospice snuck in there, and what was the term they used? Congenital defects, that was in there. I'm like, whoa. And so right away I backed up and I said, oh, no, we have Zoe. We can't possibly do this, And so that went on. We placed Zoe. I called back to the agency later and I said, our home is available. And they said, well, Linda, remember that little boy? He's 4 months old now, and we need a home for him. We can't place him. Would you take him? And so we talked to Gary, and right away we were like, I think God is calling us again, you know, knock, knock. And so we went and got him, and he was 4 months old. He had anencephaly, if you know what that is. He had many, it's a neural tube defect. If it happens on the bottom end, it's called spina bifida. Happens on the top, it's anencephaly. He had a partial brain development. He had diabetes, insipidus. He had asthma. He had a lot of stuff. Anyway, and he was kind of scary. But when we got there, I expected him, because we had some experiences with another child that was very close to death, and he survived. And so I expected Isaiah to be floppy and drooly, and, you know, but he wasn't. He just sat right up and, you know, kind of like a bright little penny, but he was blind, but we didn't know that. We didn't know a lot of stuff, if you want to know the truth. So anyway, we said yes. We took him home. Might have been a trial the first 3 weeks. I'll be honest with you. However, we had such great fun with him and with all the other kids we had. They were terrific. You know, we just did everything with him. We went on trips. We, you know, flew all over the place. With all the other grandbabies, he did what they did. So we, you know, his little wheelchair, little baby wheelchairs, we wheeled around. And Isaiah actually had his own little ministry, which was really cute. Because obviously he was black and we were white, or he was actually mocha and we're peachy. And so he attracted a lot of attention. You know, he had all this equipment, all this stuff we carried with him. And little kids loved him comes right up to the wheelchair, want to talk about it, blah, blah, blah. And then the parents would come up, and their first question always to us was, is that your grandchild? And our answer was, no, that's our child. And so that opened that whole conversation up on, this is our foster child. At that point, you know, he's a wonderful baby. Look at how wonderful he is. You too can be a foster parent, you know, and here's New Hope's card and all this and that. So anyway, he wasn't to last more than a few weeks. Isaiah lived until he was almost 11. I will say the last 3 years was difficult for all of us, but we survived it. It's not a sad story at all. It was a happy story. You know, we loved him, we adored him. He was a great inspiration to our family and to our friends and so on. The other babies were wonderful too. They, most of them, except 2, went into really wonderful Christian adoptive homes. We kept track of them for a long time, and they did really, really well, especially the little boy that almost died. He lives in Montana with a horse and a dog and all that cool stuff. So this is the thing, if you'll excuse me for just a minute. I brought a deal of water here. There it is. Am I getting too long?
Nope,
Okay.
right there.
Thank you. Anyway, this is the one thing I want to leave you with. More and more people I've talked to, almost everybody I talk to, as a matter of fact, kind of, you know, they want to know the whole story, they want to know everything, which I'm more than happy to share. There's a lot to Isaiah's story and a lot to the other kids' stories too. But anyway, one of the comments that came so often to us, or to me, was I could never be a foster parent because I would get too attached. And there's some validity in that. You do get attached, but you're supposed to get attached. That's the whole idea of the thing, that this child deserves you to be attached. They need love, they need care, they need protection, and not so much you. You know what I mean? You can be too much in your own belly button about it. Don't mean to be offensive, but you kind of have to put yourself out of it. Gary and I kind of approached the whole process of being more like grandparents. We knew these children were going to go. We didn't expect Isaiah was going to stay so long, but he did as a blessing to us. Anyway, this is, I found this after he passed away, and he passed away peacefully at home with us, which was always our goal. He did it at almost 11 years old. And anyway, this is the quote. It said, "Some people come into our lives and quickly go. Others come, stay a while, leaving footprints all over our hearts, and we are never the same again." So I just want to close by saying, happy birthday, Isaiah. It's his birthday today. We love you. God bless all of you.
Thank you.
Absolutely, you can have it.
All right, thank you very much. It's quite an inspiring story. Jess, would you mind?
Linda, how do I follow that? So you'll get to listen to me talk because Jonah, our adopted one, is not feeling good this morning, so Teresa stayed home with him. So you get me. So this goes back to 2016. We had struggled for quite a long time. We had been trying to have a third child, and we had suffered through 7 miscarriage losses, and it had really gotten to us. In February of 2016, we received the phone call that changed our family forever. Case manager in Texas had been given our name and number by someone who knew the struggles we had had and knew how much we had wanted to add to our family. She told us about this little boy who had been born on Christmas Eve to a physically abusive and drug and alcohol-filled world. He had already spent time in the NICU with collapsed lungs, and she asked if we were interested in fostering to adopt. Straight, like, as it went. We told her we needed a couple of days to pray about it. We'd call her back. But in our hearts, we knew that he was the one that God had for us. So within 45 minutes, we called her back and said, yes, he is ours. That's when the hardest part began. There's no federal program for foster care. Each state has their own rules and standards. So we had to do what's called an ICPC transfer, so Interstate Compact for the Protection and Care of Children. I think I got that right. Whew. So simply put, we had to do home studies and become a foster home for Texas and Georgia, where we were stationed at the time at Kings Bay, before he could come to stay with us. After many months of prayer, every hoop we could jump through, as y'all know, the paperwork that literally was worse than getting my security clearance. On September 23rd, we had Gotcha Day for Jonah, and we celebrated every day, or every year on September 23rd, we have Jonah's Gotcha Day. He finally came, and we named him Jonah Michael after Teresa's brother, who had passed on back in 2012. In November 2016, according to the waiting period by Texas law, the Texas law expired and the parental rights were terminated, paving the way for the next and final step, our day in court, to make it official. 1 year later, in November 2017, it became legal on paper and the adoption was finalized. Jonah has been the absolute perfect addition to our family. He's funny, smart, polite, and just shy enough. Despite his grim beginnings out of the womb, he is thriving, and we could not imagine our lives without this sweet little boy. He's exactly what our family needed, and at the exact moment, he has brought us more joy than is imaginable. I know the big thing, everybody had questions. Everybody around has questions about adoption. Just, you have to be willing to be open. And Kevin, like you were saying, everybody wants to know, is this as hard as they say? No, it's not. You just have to be willing to take the time to do it.
Thanks, Jess.
Jess,
Yes.
at what, just out of curiosity, at what point did the Navy recognize him as your dependent? Right away, or did
No.
you have to present papers?
You have to, so that's a really fun one for Navy because, or for military in general, they do not recognize until he has fully been adopted. So we had to take him out on town instead of TRICARE covering, like the original, yeah. Like we had to submit the paperwork after he was fully adopted. So it was fun. But any more questions?
Great, thanks. Jason, you want to go next?
All right, good morning. I'm a walker, so I'm not going to be stuck behind the podium here. So I'll bring a different perspective to this. So I was adopted as a child, and thank you for what you do. That's a hard job. So the key factor to the adoption process, as far as like the parents go, is patience to me. As a child, my biological parents were drug addicts, in and out of prison, every crime that you can imagine, you can name it. So I'm hoping I'm not giving you the negative side, but I'm giving you the reality of it, right? Danny and I plan on fostering to adopt probably in about 2 to 3 years. So just so you know that. But I was given up to the state when I was 2. I was living in a car in a hotel room. I had another sibling who was older. She had a different father. So I went through a few foster homes before I was with my permanent family. I didn't prepare a speech, so I'm kind of a free thinker here. So sure, that works. Okay. So my adopted parents, who are the best, by the way, I mean, you got to be really strong to go through that. And I put them through everything. So, and I'm super blessed and thankful for what they've done. But with that, my mom and dad also had, when I say mom and dad, I mean my adopted parents. They raised a lot of other foster children, so we had probably 3 additional to me from all walks of life. So there was gang activity, there was fights, I mean, you put young boys together and they're naturally just not going to get along for a certain amount of time, right? So it was a battle. It definitely was. I was born premature, I think about 4 months. I was in the hospital for a while. So this is just based on court documents. And then once my adopted family took me in and gave me all the love and everything I needed, life was a lot better. You know, and I think children really deserve at least the basics, you know, because they're innocent. They're unable to provide and care for themselves. So moving on, when I started to kind of realize, okay, my parents are heavily Hispanic and I'm just this white kid, you know, it was no secret. I naturally had the curiosity to want to find my biological parents, which did not sit well with my adopted family. And I get it, you know. I get what they're thinking, and then I was hoping that they would kind of understand where I'm going through. It's just a hard process, so that's why I said patience is key. So I found my mother, my biological mother, when I was 18. Tried to kind of have a relationship, but it's not really the same. You know, it's more like a friendship. So she's doing well, and I wish her the best, absolutely, but it's just not the same as my adopted parents. My biological father, he died in '99, so I never got to meet him. So there was a lot of pieces that I was able to put together and kind of get my story and close that book. Because growing up, adopted children and foster children, they have a lot of questions. And for those of you who are planning on adopting or fostering, they're going to ask, they're going to want to know why, and where they come from, and what issue, why don't they look like you, and all those things. So nowadays, I plan on, I know saying paying it forward sounds bad, but it's kind of, that's how we feel about it, you know. So especially working in law enforcement, I might come into a situation to where a child is an abusive, I go to a call and a child's in an abusive situation, I have to take him or her in, and, you know, we'll do that, so. But yeah, it's a long road. And for those of you who are considering it, you're strong people, and I really appreciate it, so. Questions? Thank you. Absolutely, absolutely.
Thank you very much, Jason. That's a fantastic perspective and a different perspective. It takes a lot for a child to be taken away from their parents. So every single case, every single situation is going to have those ingredients. And that's what we want to be able to do, you know, is to fill in some of those blanks where there's a need. David, Marie? And then right after their story, I'll give it to you, Colleen.
Thanks.
Okay.
Well, those are some great stories. You all who shared, I think, are braver than Marie and I were. I was going to say, you know, our story is completely different from everybody else's. We went through an adoption agency. I mean, we just wanted a family. And after we had Elizabeth, the only way to build our family was through adoption. So we considered foster care and foster adopt, and we were intimidated and we didn't do it. We just went straight for adoption, and we went for international adoption. There were some things about domestic adoption that scared us, quite honestly.
Okay, so I'm over here going to be whispering. Actually, we did look at foster adopt, and we were in California at the time, and actually, I will say one of the workers that we were speaking with at the time, at the age my daughter was at that time, and the caseworkers the children that they're working with, she actually encouraged us to consider something else. She said, at the age and stage of your daughter, and I was thinking of you, Jason, with your little ones, consider the age of your children if you're going to bring another child in, not because they're poor or damaged or this kind of thing, because of what they need at that stage of my daughter's life. She did not recommend that we do that. So that was just a little bit different. And just a side note, some people know, some people don't. Half my siblings are adopted. I grew up in a family where foster care, we had over 17 kids through my household growing up. I was the youngest by birth, but never the youngest in the household. So I got gypped on that. But supposedly the spoiled baby. But yeah, so our road was a little different. Yes, we went for adoption because we did want to increase our family. And kind of in a sense, yeah, we just wanted to increase, so.
Tell them about your meeting in the supermarket.
Oh, well, some of the ways that we, you know, people ask, well, why did you choose this or that? And like I said, adoption was a very familiar thing in my life. So I was in the supermarket when we were stationed in upstate New York for a little bit, and a lady approached me and asked me, because she asked how old my daughter was. Elizabeth was 6 months old at the time, and she said her sister was adopting from Korea, and they had no babies in their family, and they had no idea how big this baby would be. So she was trying to get clothing size and figure out, okay, if a baby comes at 8 months, about how big is that? And so we got chatting, and I asked her, what agency are you using? And I got the name of the agency and kind of filed that in the back of my mind for when we were ready, and that it was actually the agency that we used when we were back in New York, and that's how Jacob came to be part of our family. And yes, there is labor in adoption and foster care. You know, you get to lay your life bare. I'm telling you, the questions you get asked in a home study, oh, they're very fun. you just have to tell a lot about yourself. So I don't know what else. Then people know, then we moved to California, decided we wanted to add to our family, asked the kids, they were all for it, and went to another agency and said, where's the greatest need that you have of kids that, need a home. And that was the country of Ethiopia at the time, and that's where we went that route. We said we knew how much work home studies and adoption are, so we said we were open to a sibling group, 2 or more. And so we got 2, but they're not biologically, everyone assumes they're biologically siblings. They are not. They're all siblings now. Yeah. So, there you go.
She's right, there's a lot of labor, and we got to choose, let's just get a twofer, and that's what we did. We did a twofer. So another thing I was going to share was, she was talking about the home study, and this is just kind of funny, but the first time we did it, like Marie said, we were back in New York, and I still remember the social worker's name, John Good. He was a great guy. And several of the meetings that we had, we would go to their offices. I think they were in Albany, I think. And but part of the home study, he had to come to our house at one time, so that was kind of the dreaded home study, or home visit or whatever. And he would always joke about it. He'd say, well, I got to come by and check your oven. And he did, just for fun. Oh, okay, your oven's good. Yep. But I remember, the whole time that we were going through this, they were very adamant. Parsons Adoption Agency was the name of it. Very adamant that we don't get to pick, if we want a boy or a girl. It's based on need. If you're having a child naturally, you don't get to pick. So I was very surprised. We're sitting down on the couch in our living room, and he asks us, so, would you like a boy or a girl? What? Would you like a boy or a girl? So we gave him what we had been saying all along, which was, well, either one is great. We would love either. He said, well, okay. But, if you're asking me, I think a boy would be great. I'd still love to have a girl, but I think a boy would be great. I'd like to have a son. He said, and then Marie gasped when I said that. And sure, they had a little boy, and got my wish. So anyway, that was kind of funny. I was gonna point out that people do notice when you're adopting. We've had people that we've known over the years, kids actually, who grew up with our kids, who have called us from time to time, and of course it's many years, but who called us from time to time to ask about it because now they're considering it. People, somebody, I forget which one, mentioned people asking questions about their family. And giving, I think it was you, Linda, and yeah, the black-white thing, and you mentioning, having a conversation. So Marie, on the other hand, felt like, you're just being nosy. So they'd say, well, is that your child? Or I forget, like a bank teller. Yeah, this is my kid. Oh. Is the father African American? No. And she just wouldn't answer. She just,
You could tell if somebody was just curious, and there's natural curiosity, but there was also wanting to inspect you. And my kids were not to be inspected. That's their story, that's their privacy. No, you don't get to enter that world unless you enter it properly. That's my mom.
yeah, we actually felt like there's no difference. I mean, I know people notice that. I know other people notice that. We never think about it. I never do. Maybe our kids do from time to time. But to us, they're identical. Do you guys have any questions for us? Steve?
Wouldn't it be great if the entire world, including the media, were colorblind, just like you say? Wouldn't it be wonderful if everybody was just...
We can only wish, only hope.
That's my prayer.
Maybe someday. Yeah. Linda?
a restaurant, and Taylor was sitting up in his carrier out of Children's Hospital, and these two ladies came up to tell us how much he looked like us. We were like, oh, that's so cute.
So Marie could tell you stories about when she was growing up, her two sisters and a brother who were adopted, and getting the same kind of comments. How, oh, I can tell that you're sisters because you look so much alike. So, anything else, Jason?
Did you ever run into a time where you're like, yeah, what I get myself into? Can you repeat that for our online viewers?
Yeah. Jason said, did we ever get into a situation where we kind of were asking ourselves, wow, what did we get ourselves into? I think the answer is yes.
I think, is there a parent that doesn't wonder that, regardless of how their children came? But yes, you're right. And some know, like I mentioned, when they were a couple from Ethiopia, well, we instantly went from 2 children to 4 children, and one was almost 2.5, almost 3, and spoke no English. So yeah, so there were challenges. And this child was very, I said I took 4 firstborns and put them in different positions, and nobody was happy, you know, in some regard, if you think about birth orders. Just 2 quick stories. I thought that you never know how your kids are processing things. Like yesterday was one of our kids' arrival days, and they all of them came around Thanksgiving. Anyway, we used to celebrate arrival days, Citizenship Day, the day they became a citizen, their birthdays. Well, then you have this poor little firstborn that she just came into the world the way many kids come into the world naturally, and kind of wished one year she wished she had been adopted. And I was like, really? Why? She said, well, they get all these other celebrations. And I was like, oh, okay, hadn't really thought about that. So, and another one with her, just a couple of years ago, I heard her talking about speaking with other friends who were the oldest. She had a couple girlfriends, they're all the oldest, and they're talking about when remembering when their siblings arrived. And she said, wow. She said, sitting there and listening to their stories, and all of a sudden it occurred to her, and they looked at her, and she said, we just went to the airport.
Great. Hey, thank you so much, you guys. Although we're talking, about fostering and adopting, I think every foster parent, although that has their challenges, there's always the fantastically wonderful days. And I wouldn't be able to do this without talking about my daughter a little bit. And this is kind of a segue into Colleen's part, is about the resources. As a licensed foster parent, you go through training, you get resources, they tell you what to do. And we had one of those situations where we needed to rely on those resources, because probably 4 or 5 days after Missy came to us, she's a fiercely strong, fiercely independent person. I could leave her alone anywhere in the world for a week and she would survive. She would be angry as heck, but she would survive. 6 days in, she decided, you guys aren't for me, I'm out of here. She packed up her underwear and her teddy bears and left. So here's Heather and I standing at the end of our lane, looking at the end of the road, and she's just sitting at the end of the block, and I'm going back to our Olive Crest training, I said, I think we're supposed to call the cops, because this is a runaway, I think, but she's at the end of the lane, still looking at us, and lo and behold, 15, 20 minutes later, she trumped in, angry as heck again, with her rolling luggage, and we proceeded on to the next day. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Colleen Babbitt. She's a case manager supervisor with Olive Crest, and she'd just like to talk a little bit about the organization and what they do.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. I love hearing all these stories. I feel very at home when I hear. And I will tell you, Jason, anyone who grows up in foster care or is adopted themselves are the best foster parents, just so you know. Gives you any motivation to continue in your thought of doing it, because they make the best they meet the kids' needs so much better than those of us who, haven't experienced that. So a little plug there to encourage you along. But anyway, my name's Colleen Bebich, and I am the case manager supervisor, like Kevin said, at Olive Crest here in our Silverdale office. We have 3 offices in the Pacific Northwest. One's in Bellevue, and the other one's in Tacoma. And our office here in Silverdale, I feel like I'm in Silverdale. We're like on the verge, right? Even though it's Paulsbo.
We are in Silverdale.
We are? Oh, okay. Well, good.
The other side of the property is Paulsbo.
Oh, awesome. Okay, perfect. Anyway, so our specific office covers mainly Kitsap and Mason County. The other offices cover kind of the other part of our region. So, and we love kids at Olive Crest, and our goal is to prevent and treat child abuse and neglect. That's really the bottom line, and our vision is that every child deserves a strong family. And we have some of the most amazing families. It's just like a privilege and an honor every day to go to work because we have the best families. Anyway, so right here in Kitsap County, like you said earlier, there's 309 kids, approximately, give or take, in foster care. And 60 to 70 of those kids are not placed in our county because we just don't have enough foster homes. So they're having to go, leave their schools, leave their sports if they're in them, and all the things that are familiar to them. So there is a huge, huge need here in our local area. At Olive Crest, our local office, we license 66 families, and right now we have 52 kiddos placed in our homes. And my case management team gets the privilege to work directly with the families and the kids in their homes. And our main goal is to make sure kids are getting their needs met and connect them with resources. There's a lot of hard days, and if you don't question what you got yourself into, then you would be a fool, really, to be honest, because it's not for the faint of heart by any means. So, the best part is that we are a Christian organization, and in the foster care world, that is becoming harder and harder. One of the things that we do ask families that are licensed with us is to get a letter of reference from a pastor. And we are very steadfast in our Judeo-Christian, that's what the Olive Crest umbrella speaks of. And the state guidelines and laws are making it more and more difficult for us to have that requirement of our families that they are Christian-based families, and we make it very clear when we're placing kids that our families are going to take kids to church. They're going to take them to Sunday school and Awanas and the vacation Bible schools and all that stuff. We're here to plant seeds so that they know the love that Jesus has for them, and prayer that it creates and fosters a lifelong relationship with Jesus that they perhaps haven't been exposed to. So. I just want to share a quick story about a family we have. They live in Kingston, and in May they took a little 6-year-old boy in, and because his dad was driving while intoxicated and while he was in the car with him and was arrested. So this little guy arrives at their home, and they learn very quickly that he cannot speak a lick of English. Spanish is his primary language. So they became real familiar with the Google Translate app. I don't know if any of you guys have seen that. It goes to your welcoming a child that doesn't. That was a very unexpected kiddo that entered their home. And so over the months, he's still there. It's been 5 or 6 months now, and his English is extraordinary now, which is awesome. But the more we've gotten to know him, we've learned that in early 2020, his mom and brother were killed by a drunk driver while he was also in the car. And another older brother suffered traumatic brain injury. So this little guy has just experienced so much trauma, so much grief, and just really struggles to articulate all of that. And this time of year, this family does these thankful pumpkins, they call them, where they all write what they're thankful for on the pumpkin. And their own biological kids, they have 4 of their own, wrote, I'm thankful for my friends and my clothes and school and sports and all the things. And this little guy said he wanted to write, I am thankful that I am safe. And that's all he wanted to put on his pumpkin. So this family has just made a big impact on him, and he feels loved and safe in their home. So everyone keeps looking in that direction. So there are 3 different types of foster care. There is like families that get licensed to be long-term, and the goal of the department, when I say department, I'm talking Child Protective Services. I refer to them as the department always. The number 1 goal is always reunification, like Kevin said earlier. So that is a hard thing for families if they want to adopt, to come to the realization that it is the job and to support that. And we do not go into any placement with the intention of adoption unless we recently had a kid that was a safe haven baby. I don't know if you guys know what that is, when the mom just basically dropped him off at the hospital and walked out, which is awesome because he was safe and was able to, that's like the only circumstance that we would, as an agency, go into placing a child. So families are entering into a long-term placement. That can be anywhere from a couple weeks to years, and a lot of them do end up adopting if parents can't, rectify their parental deficiencies and the child can safely return. Just depends. Other families, so we have a bunch of families that are respite providers only, and those families provide overnight care for families that have long-term placements. Like if they're going on vacation and they can't take the child with, or if they just need a break, which every family that fosters typically needs. And then the other option is to become licensed doing receiving care. We do have a few families that do long-term and receiving care. And receiving care is kiddos that are coming in on an emergency basis, usually placed in protective custody by the police or overnight, like this little 6-year-old was an emergency, obviously if the dad's getting arrested, they have to have somewhere for the child to go. And those placements, we really work hard in assessing and evaluating what the needs are going to be for the child to launch them to another long-term placement. And those last up to 60 days, receiving care. It's just a short-term placement. So we have a lot of churches in Kitsap County that do partner with us in different ways. Not only do we have families, lots of churches that have foster families, but we also have churches that partner by helping the kids indirectly, I guess is a good way to say. We have a man who's made it very clear that he does not want to work directly with kids. He's not a kid person, but he loves Olive Crest. He loves our mission and what we're about. And so he's kind of become our resident handyman. So we call him when we have something at the office that needs to be fixed, or we've had some families that have some home repairs that he's helped with, and so that's been like a total blessing to some of our families. We've had life groups that make us freezer meals. So when a kid's first coming into care, there's a lot going, it's very hectic the first few weeks. So a lot of times if we can bring like a frozen meal out to them to help, just one little thing that they don't have to worry about at the beginning of a placement is helpful. We have some churches that small groups have gathered like these birthday bags, and they're they have like cake mix and frosting and streamers and balloons and all the things, for like a little kit. And we just give it to our foster parents when a kid has an upcoming birthday. And we just keep them at our office. It's such a great thing for us to be able to do. Right now we have a small group that's making us like Christmas mugs for our teens, like Christmas mugs with cocoa and candy and stuff, because we have a teen program that works with any foster youth in Kitsap County that's also not placed with our families. That's the ILS program, Independent Living Skills. I don't know if you guys have heard of that, but if you have questions about that, I'm happy to answer. And even we've had a youth group at one of the local churches come and paint our visitation rooms, just kind of spruce them up, because our families, biological parents visit at our offices sometimes. So youth groups are always eager to help us out too, indirectly. So anyway, those are just a few examples. But we feel that, the lack of homes in our community can be fixed by the churches. If every church in Kitsap County could have a handful of foster parents, then this need would be fulfilled. And so I think that's my biggest message here. So anyway, I'll share a little bit more during church.
Great, thank you, Colleen. We have a question.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to know how many of the families that are basically bringing their kids are coming to you are from families that just can't take care of it because they're homeless, they don't have the resources.
Well, any child that we place is directly from the department. So people just don't show up and say, we can't care for our children. Honestly, homelessness is not a reason for a child to be placed into in foster care. We've actually returned kids to cars with their parents, and it's very difficult, but that is not one of the requirements. Our level of what's safe and appropriate for a kid is very different than the department's standards. And ultimately, a judge, for instance, made that order to return that kid to a car with her parents.
One follow-up question. New Life is investigating buying buying commercial properties. I was at a dinner with New Life, and what they're planning on doing is, the end result is to buy up apartments where families can live in and be charged like $500 a month to live there, at a lower cost than it would be to have an apartment.
Yeah.
To help families that don't have the
Yep, that's awesome.
avoid the homelessness, help mitigate that somehow.
Yeah.
I'm thinking that's a model that if it works for you, it would work for other churches.
Yeah.
I mean, they're saying it's a huge risk. I mean, they're coming right out and saying, yeah, we're taking a risk.
Yeah.
But without risk, there's no reward.
Yeah.
It's just the way life is. But I think it's a very interesting concept.
Yeah.
Have you heard of anything?
Yeah, well, actually, it's funny you bring that up because housing's a big hot topic right now with us. We have an ILS house, we call it. So our independent living skills program is under the Olive Crest umbrella. I don't supervise that program, but they work with youth age 15 to 23 that are in foster care. You can be in foster care until you're 21, but then our ILS team can work with young adults up to age 23, and we have a house that houses right now 3 young women, and it kind of helps them launch to, they have to be like working or in school full time, but they live there essentially for a very reduced rate. And actually the Bremerton Housing Authority is trying to partner with us to have an apartment complex so our youth can also go there. I don't know all the details about that because it's not my program, but that's definitely in the works right now is some housing stuff, which is awesome.
Sounds to me like this is a model that could work in the future.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you, everybody. I'm long on time. I can't thank you all enough for participating, sharing your stories. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to myself, anybody that spoke, or even Colleen. But we'll disband and we'll get ready for service. Thank you.